Welcome to the Work Trends Podcast, brought to you by Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan M. Bureau. Every week, I interview smart people reimagining the world of work. Be sure to stay current with all of our interesting podcasts by visiting our page at Talent Culture Work Trends on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And of course, you can listen at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends Podcast, sponsored by WorkHuman. I'm your host, Megan M. Bureau. Today, we are exploring company culture and why HR leaders are uniquely positioned to lead a push for more sophisticated technology to enable strong cultures. But before we begin today's podcast, I want you to ask yourself these two questions. Number one, do you regularly use rewards and recognition with your team? And number two, do you use technology to gather intel on workplace dynamics? Joining us today is Jesse Harriet, Executive Director of WorkHuman IQ. As Global Head of Analytics, Jesse focuses on expanding the research efforts of WorkHuman IQ, and he's also building out WorkHuman's data science capabilities. He is an esteemed research and analytics professional. He has more than 20 years of experience. Jesse has advised many private and public organizations on analytics and labor market issues, including the White House, the Federal Reserve, and the U.S. Department of Labor. Jesse previously served as Chief Analytics Officer at Constant Contact and Chief Knowledge Officer at Monster Worldwide. An acclaimed author, he spends his time teaching at the University of Chicago and holds a master's and PhD in experimental psychology from DePaul University. Jesse, we're so delighted to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Megan. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Well, why don't we just dive right in, shall we?
Sounds good.
Let's begin getting on the same page about what we're discussing today. While everyone likely has their own explanation of what organizational culture, and yes, I'm doing my famous air quotes, work trends community. You can see it. I know you can feel it. But tell us what this means in WorkHuman's definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And organizational culture, as you mentioned, is one of those things that means different things to depending on who you ask. But the way WorkHuman thinks about it is that the organizational culture is really the culmination of all of the company's values, beliefs, more importantly, how these values and beliefs shape an employee's work practices and how they behave and show up at work. You know, it's really rooted in the lived experiences that employees have and how they experience their day-to-day workplace. For example, at WorkHuman, our organizational culture relies on connection, right? That's the most important thing to us, fostering those deep human connections where employees feel seen, valued, and they can bring their authentic selves to work. And for us, employee recognition is really at the heart of what we do. So that is the big culture driver for us. But, you know, in today's work environment, companies really need to foster a culture that caters to all employees, regardless of where they are, who they are, and the skills that they bring to the organization. We think about remote work, we think about back to the office, different generations. All of that contributes to the culture.
2 words, true that. I have to say, right? I mean, this is very helpful. Culture means so many things to different people. And it's nice to make sure we jumped into this conversation today feeling fully aligned. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here. There's a lot to unpack. So theoretically, everyone deserves to thrive in a positive workplace culture. But what does research tell us about why shaping and maintaining culture is so very important?
You know, we study this a lot, right? A big focus for us at WorkHuman is to understand some of these dynamics, and it's really hard. If it was easy, every company would have a great culture. We did a study with Gallup and really found that 2 in 10 employees agree that they are connected to their organization's culture. So only 2 in 10. But those that did agree that they felt connected to the culture were 3.7 times likely to be engaged in their work 68% less likely to feel burned out, 55% less likely to be looking elsewhere for job opportunities, right? And they were more likely to use words like caring, innovative, inclusive. Other people would use terms like toxic, disorganized, chaotic, etc. And another study that Gallup found that only 33% of employees in the US and 23% of employees feel engaged.
Thank you, Jesse. I think we do all deserve to spend our valuable time in a positive workplace culture. Anyone out there in the work trends and talent culture global community knows I've been talking about this for a while. And let me tell you, our community of listeners are often the ones who make or break workplace culture every single day. But I got to tell you, this is a great reminder that care for culture must be intentionally built and sustained. So let's move into the tech aspect of this rich topic. So tell us, how can technology play a role in providing data-driven insights about an organization's workplace culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. And understanding culture is a real challenge. It's not going to come from your traditional HRIS systems. You really need to understand employee attitudes. You need to understand how they behave at work, and then also what outcomes they're driving. And in other words, you really need deep insights into how the employee mindset is translating into their performance. Not something easy to do. Unfortunately, most companies still over rely on like information techniques pioneered, over 60 years ago, like traditional employee surveys, focus groups, exit interviews, and these are very susceptible to systematic bias, right? For example, best practices to make employee engagement surveys anonymous, but if you ask your average employee, does he or she believe that it's truly anonymous, you sometimes get a mixed reaction, right? So it prevents people from being authentic in that feedback. And so really companies need to look for newer information sources. And we have obviously this new age of AI, right? Where there's a lot of other opportunities to bring other things in. So for example, at WorkHuman, we power social recognition programs for some of the world's largest companies. And those employees are encouraged to express authentic moments of gratitude, spot excellence in action, and then share that, with the entire company. And not only does that do good things for the business, but it's also a treasure trove of insights. And at WorkHuman, we think about that as human intelligence, right? This crowdsourced and authentic employee insights plus AI can give you things like skills assessments on employees, highlight hidden gems inside the organization, help with talent mobility challenges. Where's my next opportunity? Help with mentorship networks, help with onboarding. People coming into the team can see what's important to the team and values. So all kinds of hosts across the talent lifecycle of different use cases.
I really like this aspect of discussing culture because it can be fascinating, right? It's still somewhat new to be able to actually measure organizational culture, right? I mean, it used to be primarily word of mouth, and now we have data that really connects engagement and retention in a wide variety of other factors that used to be so nebulous. So I'm here for it. Data for the win, 100%. Could not agree with you more on this, by the way. So WorkHuman is an employee recognition solution. Could you share a bit about how you enable a rewards and recognition program to become a strategic resource for organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody will think they know what recognition means. But if you really dig into the details and ask, well, what does that mean to you to give recognition to your employees? Some will say, well, I say thank you every week, but others will really understand that it takes more than that. It takes an authentic, deep appreciation for each employee and the way they are unique. And so there are a few areas that we highlight for impactful recognition that we found through, studying this for over 20 years. One, that it's frequent and timely. So whenever you notice it, recognize it. Not once per year, not when it's time for the performance review, but every time you notice it, right? Put it in the flow of work. Two, make it personalized and authentic. Tailor that message to the person. Highlight the uniqueness and their contribution. Third, make it equitable. Think about the scope of work, the impact, the contribution level, and the time, right? So don't give a high value award to somebody who just did something that was maybe a small contribution, and give those higher value awards for things that people are really going above and beyond. Fourth, make it inclusive and unbiased. Focus on the contribution. Don't qualify it. There are so many examples, and we actually have an AI tool called the Inclusion Advisor where we help people. You're kind of an in the moment teaching experience on what bias might look like. And you'd be surprised sometimes people qualify their recognition. They'll say, "Oh, you're right out of school. I'm so impressed with how you have contributed to this project," right? But the reality is it's about their contribution. It's not about how many years or they are out of school. And then lastly, make it descriptive. Don't just say, "Thank you, well done, so glad you're here." Like that's all generic stuff that's quick and easy to do, but it's not going to drive the impact. And so be descriptive, talk about the impact that it had and then how it felt to you.
Rewards, recognition. What's interesting to me about this is that the old-fashioned thank you and handshake has not, and I don't believe will not, go out of style here. We want to be authentically thankful, yes, but I think it's also important to learn about programs that are very strategic in ensuring employees are actually receiving the recognition they deserve. So let's unpack this just a little bit more. What are some of the insights that HR leaders can get from their rewards and recognition program? And tell us, when recognition is done right, what does that feel and look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. When recognition is done right, there are a lot of employee benefits, right? The experience the employee has, they feel seen, appreciated, heard. They're more likely to have increased engagement, give that extra performance, be less likely to leave. And there are even, improved financial and business outcomes like total recordable injury rates go down or financial performance increases. Real bottom line, outside of even the talent sphere, those outcomes. But there's also a lot of data and wealth of insight that comes from a recognition done right program. Things like understanding the skills of an employee. I mean, skills is all the rage right now, right? Everyone wants to be a skills driven organization. Very few companies are doing it or know exactly what that means. And a lot of that is, hey, just because I raise my hand and say I have a skill doesn't mean I have it. And so recognition is a crowdsourced vote by your peers to say, no, you have this skill. I've seen it in action and it's had an impact. And so extracting those skills from the language that comes out of those messages is one of those key benefits. Also, we know the org chart that HR has. We also know that's usually not how work gets done, right? There's a lot of informal org charts and informal communities that happen inside of work. And that recognition data paints a picture of kind of in real time, what's happening inside the organization and can help you understand, well, who are the emerging leaders? Who are the people that, yeah, maybe they're not managers right now or leaders right now, but they have the potential to grow there. So, and then lastly, another example would be, what are the priorities for my teams across the company? What are they working on? What's having the greatest impact? All of these things that can be a real challenge to pull together in a succinct way using other data. That recognition data is a complement to all these other sources that we have available to us.
Yeah, I mean, these are solid examples, Jesse. I think this is such an obvious win-win for employers, managers, and employees alike. I mean, employees can receive that much needed recognition and understand that. That can be so powerful. You're not saying something about your own talent and skills. Joe is, or Mary is. I mean, how cool is that? Talk about empowering yourself to maybe see yourself in a different way. So to me, that's truly, truly groundbreaking stuff, right? When we talk about personal career development, to me, that's the gold. That's the good stuff. I think it's all good. I think leaders also are starting to see and measure what's working. And so this data becomes that empowerment tool, essentially, right? Opening up these communication lines. And, these new capabilities truly change what, for example, a CHRO is working with in terms of data insights. How do you think access to this type of information will change what it means to lead HR and create real, tangible organizational culture?
Yeah, that's a big question, right? And the reality is, I think in short, it's going to raise the expectations of HR. It's going to create a higher bar for HR's ability to be proactive, to act quickly, and in some cases predict, right, and highlight opportunities among organizational culture and the workforce before other leaders may even see them. And so, if HR invests in building this human intelligence data capability that's scalable, they become the most insightful person at the leadership table. We all know that people can be a company's greatest asset, but once you have a window into how people are working and collaborating and energizing, who are those people who are really fueling your culture, who has the hidden skills and talents, they can bring that to the table, right? They can highlight that proactively. And HR can implement strategies that keep people engaged, loyal, and then really, maximize their performance. And, even though we're talking about heavy emphasis on technology in this conversation, the truth of it is the access to this new information really helps workplaces become more human-centered because you're elevating the voice of the employee, right? Prioritizing and celebrating them and deepening their human connections, which makes them feel committed to the business in the long run.
And guess what, everyone? That's the goal. That's where we're heading to by using this technology. We're not replacing anybody. I think if anything, we're just making humans better. We're making ourselves more in tune with who we really are so we can show up as our true selves at work every single day. And to me, that's powerful stuff. So I want to thank you, Jesse, for being so smart, so insightful, and leading the way here for us. This has been a really amazing conversation.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Megan. I appreciate your insights and look forward to talking to you again.
Now, that was a fun conversation. Jesse is clearly passionate and knowledgeable. The topic of organizational culture should always be top of mind. Its importance doesn't expire over time. Remember that, okay? What does change is how we manage and measure what we're doing. And that, my friends, is very exciting. So here are a few of my key takeaways. Number one, if you haven't yet found a way for technology to play a role in providing data-driven insights into your workplace culture, I encourage you to consider what you might be missing. Number two, there is a difference in recognition done right and recognition efforts that miss the mark. It's important to have access to information that clearly illustrates what is working and what isn't. And number three, genuine thank yous are not passé. So never stop showing authentic appreciation for people around you, your team members, your family, anybody, honestly. Anybody. But it's also to know what else results in engagement, retention, and overall culture fit. Jesse, thanks again for being with us today. I think our community is hungry for information like this, and I really like the way you think. Last but not least, the talent culture community wants to hear from you. Be sure to use the hashtag #WorkTrends and share your thoughts on any of the following questions. Number one, do you have a formal rewards and recognition program? Number two, what kinds of rewards and recognition work well in your industry? And number three, what aspects of organizational culture do you wish you could measure but currently can't? Visit us on the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Twitter. Feel free to share your responses to these questions, or feel free to contact me personally at Megan M. Bureau on the socials, or at mbureau@talentculture.com. As always, thanks so much for listening to the Work Trends podcast, the place to find meaningful connections at work. If you love what we do here, make sure to share it with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors. You can even send us more questions. We love questions here in the Work Trends community. Thank you. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a reminder that you can hear all the Work Trends podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the podcast page at talentculture.com. Be sure to subscribe so you can listen on the go and stay up to date on all the latest news you want to hear. I look forward to catching up with you next time. I hope today's information made you wiser, happier, more informed, and most importantly, thinking of how you can use it to improve the quality of your life.